Hey, what's up, guys? Chris Nelson here. And what do all of you think when you hear this? Oh, there it is. Wait, here it is. There. Oh, look at that painting. Isn't that good? Oh, man. I miss him so much. And just hearing that, I mean, doesn't that just give you a calm? When you hear that, you just want to hear the voice of the great Rush Limbaugh again. And I am here with Scott Schaefer, who worked with Rush for a very long time. What did you do for Rush, Scott?
I was Rush's IT guy, personally and professionally.
So you did everything. You hooked everything up in the EIB studio and everything like that. What was that like? How did you meet Rush, and how what was that like?
Well, it was a long time ago. Rush had been working in New York City for a little while, and he'd been working with a computer salesperson down in the village. And they had just brought me in as a tech. The salesperson came to me and said, "Have you heard of Rush Limbaugh?" I said, "Yeah. What of it?" And he asked me if I'd be willing to go do a migration for him. This will date it. He went from a Mac 2FX to a Quadra 700.
So I see you're wearing an Apple shirt with the
Yes.
old Apple logo on it.
Yep.
You're the guy that got Rush onto using Mac.
No, Rush found Macs on his own. I'm the one who brought him from machine to machine to machine. Prior to my coming in, he threw every tech out, calling them his computer idiot.
So he was calling everybody his computer idiot now, and then brought you in, and then you became the guy. And I'm a Rush baby, as is Governor Ron DeSantis, and we are a generation of people who we're around 40 now. Like, I'm 40 now, and as you can see by the gray hairs that I got coming in, but everything that I learned about conservatism and everything that has shaped my political view came from Rush Limbaugh. And I think a lot of people can say that. And we're really his legacy today. And when I was a kid in the 90s, it was a bonding thing with my dad. Like, I would listen to Rush with my dad during the Clinton years, and I remember his TV show, and I remember him talking about. I think I was like, does he only talk about Bill Clinton? Like, what's the deal with this? But his voice just had a calming sense to it. And then I went on to work in radio, where I was selling ads during his show, and that's when I first got introduced to cancel culture, which has been around a lot longer than social media. Can you talk about Rush Limbaugh, the person?
Rush was what you saw of him on the air, what you heard of him on the air, was just himself amplified. He was always larger than life in person, always wanting to discuss issues. Oh, we talked about media a lot and the different TV shows and movies and things that have come out. That sort of evolved over the years. I remember during the 2000 election craziness, I was in the studio doing something for him, and we got into a discussion of how the Middle East got to where it was then and where it was headed. and he wanted to know what I thought because he knew I grew up in Brooklyn and, and was very far from where, a different experience than he had.
Growing up in Cape Girardeau,
Yep.
Missouri. And I just want to play a clip from Rush's old TV show about how he foresaw the wokeness and the things that were coming. Here, I'm going to share the screen. Let's play this here.
This.
Because I'm wearing these ribbons. I care more than any of you about anything. And these ribbons say so. I want you people sitting at home and you people in the audience, look down at your lapel right now. I want you to do this. Put the camera back on me. Do this. When you look down, what do you see? You don't see anything because you're not wearing any ribbons. It means you're a bigot. It means you're a racist. It means you're a sexist. It means you're a homophobe. It probably means you're a white guy. It probably means you're a European. And you alone are responsible for all the ills of America. But I'm not, because I'm wearing these ribbons. I care more than you.
This is 1993, and he had it right. He knew how the libs and how they act and how they use these things to make themselves feel better about themselves, like fighting against climate change, quote, things like that as virtue signaling. Just talk about Rush and his ability, how he knew the left and how he knew them and could articulate what was really going on with them, even back in 1993.
I always found it uncanny. He was always able to cut through all the static, always. He always knew exactly what time of day it was. He always saw the distraction coming before they even brought it up. He thought that the Contract for America that Newt Gingrich brought out was going to really cause Clinton some headaches. And he was right. And that wound up leading the Clinton administration to probably be more conservative than most other administrations we've seen to date since then.
Now, talk about Rush's relationship with Donald Trump, because not only was Rush a fan of Donald Trump, but he was also a neighbor of Donald Trump. He lives on Palm Beach Island, like on the opposite end of Mar-a-Lago. Just describe his relationship with Trump.
It's not an easy thing to pin down because I wasn't privy to a lot of that. I know that there was a personal relationship. I know that they spoke often, both on and off the air. I know that they went golfing periodically. It's pretty much the majority of what I can tell you about, how that evolved. But I do know that he had a way of reaching out when he felt something strongly, to at least get a message through. And and once President Trump was in the White House, he did have to go through channels to make that happen.
Yeah, and do you think that did Rush have an effect on Trump? Because I think that Rush had a profound effect on Trump. And what do you think that Rush would have thought about Trump's recent lurch to the left when he's talking about accepting a BLM endorsement and going soft on abortion, calling the heartbeat bill a bad thing, stuff like that?
I think that Rush would have had an objection to it personally. He might have voiced that privately, but he probably would have avoided any public criticism because he was always trying to push the people in office, the people in power, the people that he respected and supported in the right directions. If you remember back during the Bush administration, W. Bush, he was always trying to make suggestions, both on the air and off, um, to try and nudge things into a more conservative vein. I don't think he would have been happy with the denouncement of the heartbeat bills. I don't think he would have been happy with the BLM notice. Look, if this guy from BLM is truly endorsing who Donald Trump is and was, and truly has started to believe conservative values, why is that not in either his statement or President Trump's statement? It's purely, it seems purely a populist directed move. My take on President Trump is that he was always a populist before anything else. And when conservatism was in vogue, or he could use that in his, in the right direction, he definitely went with that.
Here is President Trump giving Rush Limbaugh the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country.
Oh, it just gives, I miss this Donald Trump. I really do. I do. Gives me chills. Look at this. Oh, this pissed off the lid so much.
And Rush, in recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity, I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
He didn't know, did he? He didn't know.
No.
Look at that. Hold on. Let me pause this. Let me pause this. He didn't look. He did not know. Look at that look on his face, Scott. He didn't know that he was getting that, did he?
No, he didn't.
I mean, just wow. And boy, I miss this Trump, man. I hate what's happened. I really do. But let's watch the rest of this. This was one of the greatest moments of all time.
I will now ask the First Lady of the United States to present you with the honor, please.
All right. I mean, that was just so awesome. That was good. That was really good. Okay. All right.
Rush and Catherine, congratulations. Thank you, Catherine.
All right. Well, I think that was one of Trump's best moves as president. I mean, giving him the Congressional Medal of Freedom is it's the highest civilian honor that can be given to somebody. What was he thinking that day? What was because this is close to the end of his life. This was after he was diagnosed with cancer.
It was right after his diagnosis, yes.
What was he feeling that day? Were you talking to him before and after that?
I just knew that he was going. Well, I knew why he was going, and I was told I wasn't supposed to tell anybody, including him. But he had told me that he was going in. He had to go to the State of the Union, that he got arm twisted into going, but that he was going up to the Northeast for to see doctors as part of a treatment protocol, and he had worked the State of the Union into the trip in order to make that all work. He had no idea it was coming, and Rush was always very humble. Was always very humble. He always thanked God for everything that came his way, and was always, amazingly gracious to everybody who worked with and for him.
And he was, of course, a very big Trump fan, and yeah, his humility was all it always showed. People thought that he was this. There was this kind of an idea that, oh, if you're on radio, you must be this big shot and stuff like that. But I know how hard it is to keep a radio audience and keep people coming back. And if you're an arrogant prick, if you're like a Keith Olbermann, I mean, look at these guys. They eventually get canceled, or they eventually get worn out, or they move on. I saw a lot of people that were like, "Oh, we're going to be the Rush Limbaugh of the left," and then they were nowhere to be found. A couple years later, you always heard that kind of thing. I remember when they started Air America and stuff like that. But he just was. You don't get to where he was without being a humble person. I see Ron DeSantis is trending again, and we're going to talk about the debate. But Scott, you brought to my attention that it was actually Rush's last broadcast on February 2nd, 2021, where he said the following about Governor Ron DeSantis.
I want to start, however, with a graduate, or the closest that we've ever had to a graduate of the EIB Limbaugh Institute, and that would be Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. As you know, there are no graduates from the Limbaugh Institute because the learning never stops. We don't issue degrees here because there never is a time where we have proclaimed that our students have learned it all. Or that because our curriculum is constantly expanding. There is no set curriculum here. But Governor DeSantis has asked in the past for an honorary degree. And Governor DeSantis has said that if said honorary degree were ever bestowed, that he would hang it, frame it, hang it proudly on the wall in his gubernatorial office. And if anybody has come close to earning an honorary degree from the Limbaugh Institute, it is the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Have I mentioned lately how much I admire the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis? Details coming up, but he has launched an ambitious crackdown on big tech. Somebody with the guts to do it. Somebody also not closing down his state. This guy has got what
let's
we call...
stop right there. Not closing down his state. Now, Rush is a resident of Florida. And now we have Donald Trump out there just telling flat out lies about Ron DeSantis. Now, of course, we are never going to know exactly what Rush would have said today. I find it hard to think that he would start going hard on Trump. But I can't imagine he would like the fact that Trump has begun this smear campaign against Ron DeSantis. What are your thoughts?
I can't imagine that he would like the smear campaign. I would think that he would have been called out on that, if not publicly, then privately, the very first time he said something before the governor's reelect. Very early on, it was seen that Governor DeSantis was going to be, other than Trump, the front runner for the GOP nomination. And it was Trump's idea to try and pop him one and see if he went away. And that was pretty clear. I don't think Rush would have appreciated it. I think he would have said something. But again, we never really know. Rush had a tremendous amount of loyalty for everybody that he had ever worked with, endorsed, or befriended, and always gave them second, third, fourth chances as he could in every situation. But he definitely was a promoter of being truthful and factual from beginning to end. I think that he would have spoken up and said right away, during the reelect, he would have said something to counteract the comment when President Trump actually lavished some favor on Charlie Crist.
Yeah, and you talk about public versus private. And I kind of had a little bit of a faux pas of that myself, where I was on a Twitter space this morning and said something that needed to be said, but it really should have been said in private. And I wonder what kind of effect that Trump or that Rush had on Trump, because Trump started losing me shortly after Rush's death. Is when I noticed a change in Trump. He would not renounce Fauci. He would not renounce the libs, and he started to become more lib. It's almost like he reverted to being a New York lib Democrat. Do you think that Rush's death had an impact on Donald Trump?
I'm sure it had an impact. But I'm also sure that no longer having that voice available to him, no longer having that counsel available to him, who are the other conservatives that would have his ear? Steve Bannon is at arm's length. The majority of the people talking to him now are former Bushies. People from the Bush administration that parted company and jumped over to working with Trump during the administration or, during the transition. And, now they have stayed around.
And I see that, and I got a comment from Mike Boatman, one of the Trump people on social media that I haven't blocked yet, because some of them have just become so insufferable. I'm not, look, if you're posting pictures of polls, and we'll get to that in a minute, DeSantis in high heels, or if you're just posting derogatory, negative things, and trying to bring me down, bring DeSantis down, I'm not going to listen to it. And I've noticed that's become Trump's mantra now. It's not what I can do. It's bringing DeSantis down and smearing Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, we saw him at the debate last night, defended Trump again. Has has Trump changed? Because Mike Boatman's saying Trump hasn't changed. I very much disagree. I can that this Trump we have today is not the same Trump who was giving Rush Limbaugh the Presidential Medal of Freedom just a few years ago. Thoughts?
He's the same, but he's not the same. There are other instincts that are Trump's instinct is to punch or to punch back, and to try and get ahead of any attack. But his instinct is also to want to be loved, to want to be popular. You can see this from when he first came down the escalator. Look, when he started his campaign in 2015, he did not have the grassroots support at that point. It wasn't until he found a couple of issues that started to resonate. And it's very easy to lose sight of the issues and simply get lost in the popularity. And that's what it seems to be. His behavior is very similar to what he did in his first run. You saw in his first run, he attacked John McCain. He attacked Ted Cruz. He told all kinds of crazy things about Cruz. But he rose above it in that campaign because the issues took center stage. I don't know that the issues can take center stage in this case because too many of them will fly in the face of Trump's ego for his performance in his first term. The issues in front of us are medical tyranny, making sure that the border gets controlled and that we actually have a country to speak of, getting the budget under control. These are all things that he talked about during his first term, but he didn't effectively do in his first term. Everyone seems to forget he had both houses of Congress in his first 2 years. And other than a tax reform bill, which while impactful was still, those cuts still need to be renewed at some point because they were cuts, they weren't a reformation. He still didn't get anything truly substantive done. He got blocked by Paul Ryan. He got blocked by McConnell. And his continued lavishing of praise on those guys. He had the option to get McConnell out. At the time, if he had supported McConnell's rival in Kentucky, McConnell wouldn't have won re-election.
I remember that, and I was just like, "What are you doing?" I mean, he had a guy running against him, and Trump had the kind of juice just in his endorsement, which used to carry a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
Doesn't really anymore, but it did back then. And I just, when I saw him getting behind Mitch McConnell and that silly little video that he played with Mitch, and it was like, "We're at a crossroads here." And do you remember that video? It was silly.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump's just like, Mitch. But these things like empowering Fauci, backing McConnell, backing Lindsey Graham, appointing Chris Wray, and what he's unleashed on Trump's own supporters. You put these together and you start to notice a pattern.
But then you have the other hand. He did have the sense, he did have the gut instinct to reach out, and he brought in Scott Atlas. He brought in Scott Atlas into the coronavirus task force. Unfortunately, too late, and didn't take enough of Atlas's advice. But he did. I think Trump's instincts are very good. I think that Steve Deace has a saying that no one can rise above their own worldview. What is Trump's worldview? His worldview for 2015, 2016 was he was adopting conservatism and conservative ideals because that's what the country needed. That's what he felt the country needed. I think
he doesn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
I don't think Trump is a true conservative. I never thought Trump was a true conservative. Rush even said that Trump was not a true conservative.
No way. Where's that clip? Or did he not say that on the air?
He said it on the air. He said it on the air.
Yeah, Rush was not a kind of guy that would talk smack about anybody. He was himself. You can probably speak more to this, but what did he say? Because I'm looking for this.
I don't know that you'll find it. I don't remember it being said more than once or twice, and I believe it was in that last year after Trump left office. Those last couple of months. Trump, above all, wants to be loved. He wants to be popular.
Yeah, and that to me, that's like that just jives with what we're seeing now. And here is Rush. This is him talking about Trump's legal team. And I would really like to find that clip. It just sounds like Trump wants to be loved, and he tells people what he needs to say to be loved.
And my overall opinion is that Trump runs on instinct, and sometimes those instincts can be guided, but his underlying worldview is not that of conservatism. It's much more in the direction of populism.
And populism to me is just like, I'll say whatever to be popular. That's what populism is to me.
Cameras yet again, and was even unusually silent on social media for much of the day, as more top Republicans slam Mr. Trump's legal team for serving up nothing burgers in his quest to upend the 2020 election.
You call a gigantic press conference like that, one that lasts an hour, and you announce massive bombshells, then you better have some bombshells. They promised blockbuster stuff, and then nothing happened. And it's not good.
Even though some of the president's advisors urged him to dump attorney Sidney Powell from his legal team,
President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it.
It's unclear whether that will satisfy close allies like former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who are losing patience with Mr. Trump's efforts to cling to power.
I'm switching over here to my other internet because it's kind of going in and out. I hate that. But there he was. I don't remember that. I don't remember that when he was calling out the legal team and saying, like, where's your big reveal here?
Oh, he was very frustrated by the whole thing. I remember it clearly. I was frustrated by the whole thing. Anyone who watched had to be frustrated by the whole thing. Look, to this day, I believe that Trump may have had the votes to win the election. He didn't have the organization to make the election honest. He didn't have the team in place. Anyone who reviewed the CARES Act, which Trump signed, has to know that there were pieces of that bill that grant all kinds of leeway that could lead to election malfeasance. And if you look in states where you have Democrats in control, that's exactly... The polls did not match the end result. Not in 2020, not in 2022. Um, the only place where the polls have matched consistently has been within the state of Florida. And even then, there's still a lot of hedging going on there's a lot of funny business going on in those numbers.
Funny you bring up polls, because when I see Trump and these people, I mean, people that I guess I thought knew better, but Trump has based his entire campaign on polls. He's using them to duck debates. He's hiding behind them. And there's no substance. It's just, here's what this guy in a bow tie who claims he called nationally, where he picked these people from, who the hell knows, but they're likely Republican voters. And overwhelmingly, every time it comes out that they want Trump over Ron DeSantis.
But Chris, have you looked at the statistics? Have you looked at the crosstabs of some of these polls?
1% on Trafalgar.
They're coming up with a 1% response rate, and they're still only coming up with 500 to 800 respondents on a nationwide poll. Really? Okay,
so take me through that.
160 million registered voters. 160 million registered voters. At least 80 million of them are Republican, and you can't find more than 2,000 respondents. My phone hasn't rung.
Where do you think they're finding people? Are these email lists, or that, because we don't have phones? It's not like taking a poll in the 90s where they used to give you a call at home and go down questions, and they'd show what the questions were, and then they put it up. How are they doing it today? We hear like proprietary methods that we can't disclose and stuff like that. Like, what the hell is this?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I can tell you that the polls that matter start on January 15th.
That's why I'm like, let's just get down to business. Let's cut the crap. So Rush had some things to say on polls. And I don't even have to ask you about this, about what he would have thought about Trump hiding behind these polls. I can play Rush's words. The best thing, and let's talk about Rush's legacy here in a minute. But here is what Rush would say about polling.
This time we had made him out to be the next Bill Cosby, not Clinton, sorry. The timing was perfect, the same kind of October surprise we used to destroy Romney, Bob Dole, Herman Cain, you named it. We turned that goody two-shoes, Mitt Romney, into a monster. If it wasn't for 9/11, we could have taken out Bush 43 like we did his dad. They can't, but in other words, if Trump is at 4 points after withstanding this barrage, then they have to be scratching their heads. Now, I want to remind you of one more thing. We're getting close now to the period of time where the pollsters are going to have to start showing the race as it is. Now, I'm of the opinion they're not yet. I'm of the opinion that they're still using their polls to make news, to shape public opinion, rather than reflect it. But as we get closer to the election, we're not there yet, by the way, but as we get closer to the election, all of these polling companies are going to want to be right when it's all over. And so the polls that we get a week prior, the last polls before the election from all of these different outfits, probably will be closer to what they really think is going to happen. And because they have their reputations to protect after the election is over. Of course, they may not care about that anymore. It's such a one-sided, nothing's going to happen to them if they blow it.
I mean, there you go. There. Oh, I gotta clip that. That's gotta go viral right there. Because what I remember about Rush, about polls, he would always say this. He would say, polls are meant to shape public opinion, not reflect public opinion. Thoughts?
Trump said the same thing. If you go back to Trump in, I'm finding it now so that I can read it exactly. Trump said the same thing when he was on the opposite end of the polls, that polls are used to shape opinion, and he had his, Trump has his own way of saying things.
Well, he probably got that from Rush. I mean, he probably picked up a lot of the stuff listening to Rush. And I think Trump was very tuned into Rush because he knew that that Rush represented guys like me, like Middle America. Guys like me and you. And if he was going to tap into us and become president, then he was wise to listen to Rush and take on some of his views. Is Trump a phony? I mean, is he just like a phony? Do you think any of the things he said? I'm trying to figure this out myself. I'm not. I don't know what your relationship with Trump is, if you have one at all.
None at all.
I'm trying to figure this out myself because I used to think, okay, maybe he just is easily fooled. Maybe he was trying his best. Now I'm starting to think he might be exactly what the left has said he was. Yeah, you're right, Mike. January 15th will be the only poll. I'm with you on that. But I'm starting to think, has this guy just been lying to us the whole time? That's what I'm trying. I know there's no real answer to that, but that's what I'm starting to think.
There are positives to take away from Trump, and if Trump could have some self-reflection, then overall his way of doing things and his desires to be a force for good would definitely be a positive. But I think that he is too immersed in his own popularity at this point.
Yeah, it seems that way to me. Now, when it comes to let's just play a clip from the debate last night, and then we'll wrap this up. But I think that Ron DeSantis in this debate last night, if Rush was going to be coming on the air in 2 hours, I mean, I think we would be getting
You'd be getting a greatest hits of everything that happened at the debate for sure.
You would. You'd be getting greatest hits, and I think that there's a big gap here because you mentioned Steve Deace, and that I've heard that from a lot of people that he's about the closest thing we have to Rush Limbaugh on the radio now or anywhere. But I stopped listening to any talk radio, and after Rush died, and these podcast hosts are just they're just insufferable to me. I can't listen to them. They don't really do what Rush did in any way, and they but you're right, he would be. Go ahead. Yeah, he would be.
A lot of them have their own niche. They have their own way of doing things and saying things. Look, Rush was one of a kind.
Reckoning for what this government did during COVID-19. That includes the mRNA shots. They put it out. It was experimental. People wanted it. Then the government started trying to mandate it, to say you don't have a right to put food on your table if you don't take an mRNA shot that was under emergency use. They tried to take nurses away. Now, in Florida, we blocked that. We provided protections for everybody so that they wouldn't lose their job. You also have the FDA approving an mRNA shot for 6-month-old babies. There was no data to support that. They're doing it because big pharma will make money. So I'm going to go in there, CDC, NIH, FDA. We're going to clean house. There's going to be a reckoning because right now nobody's been held accountable for any of the damage. And they're going to try to do it again. When I'm president, this will never happen to our country ever again.
Yeah,
we need a reckoning for what this government did during people.
I mean, Rush, I know. Look at that, man. He's mad there. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah. He's like, look, I know just from listening to Rush what he would have said about DeSantis, what he would have said about this. What are your thoughts, Scott?
Well, I found the quote from Trump on polls, but but Rush would be equally upset. And he would point out that Trump is going to have, I would think he would point out that Trump is going to have a very hard time being that vessel of reckoning, since so much of what happened during COVID was set, the stage was set by Trump. Between Project Warp Speed, the CARES Act, and all of the other actions taken. Very hard time.
Yeah. I mean, he did, and there we go. But I just think, and Rush would be breaking these things down. He would be going through and breaking these things down and playing all these clips from the debate and giving his take on it. And a lot of people went to Rush for his for what he thought. And here's something from the debate last night. You actually had Ron DeSantis defending Donald Trump here and talking about how he got the election secure here in Florida.
Many Republicans are concerned about the legitimacy of elections. A federal judge just ruled that Pennsylvania must count undated mail-in ballots. Unlike Alabama, many states still don't require any identification to vote. What should states do now to increase election integrity and voter confidence for the 2024 election?
Well, Tom, thanks for the question. Thanks for what you guys do at Judicial Watch. It's really, really important. There's a lot of corruption in this government. You guys are doing a great job. What you should do for election integrity is do what we did in Florida. 20 years ago, Florida and elections was a joke. Everybody would laugh at it. I came in, I removed a couple supervisors from South Florida. We require voter ID universal, no Zuckerbucks, no mass mail balloting, and no ballot harvesting. We even have an agency that prosecutes people for violating election laws. The result of that, in both 2020 and 2022, we counted millions and millions of votes on election night, produced the results, it was transparent, and everybody was happy. That is not happening throughout this country. But let me tell you this as the nominee. I think it's important. Not every state's where we need to be. There is ballot harvesting in places like Nevada, all these places. I am not going to fight with one hand tied behind my back. I'm going to have organizations in all the swing states. If they're harvesting, we're harvesting. If they're Zuckerbucks, we're Zuckerbucks. We are going to exploit whatever the rules are. I favor changing the rules to be like Florida and some of the other states that have done a good job. But until then, we have to do that. And then just on the Justice Department and FBI. I mean, I remember being, in Iraq working with FBI on the ground and being, and then I was a special assistant. I used to have such a high regard for these agencies. What they did to Donald Trump with the Russia collusion was one of the biggest abuses of power in the history of our country. These agencies need to be cleaned out. With me, you'll have a new FBI director on day one. We're going to clear out the DOJ, the IRS, all these places. Buckle your seatbelts. There's going to be a new sheriff in town.
Oh, I just thought, and then defending Trump. The guy who has been maliciously attacking him from safely from Mar-a-Lago and then refusing to get on the debate stage. What do you think about that?
That's the difference between someone who has a conservative worldview and believes what he says. He's going to point out the positive, even if it's from someone who's been attacking him.
Wow, just wow. And sometimes I think, Scott, that without Rush, it's gotten harder. It's been harder, hasn't it? Because
look,
you had a job. Can you talk about what happened when you heard about his death?
I had a feeling it was coming. I mean, we all knew it was coming because he made the announcement a year before. But having not heard from him, I knew he wasn't on the air from February 2nd. But having not heard from him for several days prior to Catherine's announcement, you had that feeling of the worst was coming. And even then, it still took us all by surprise. And we were all pretty well shaken.
And you actually had to go and clean clean out the EIB studio.
We had to clean out the entire studio, strip it bare to the walls.
Oh man, that could not have been easy.
No, it wasn't.
Just yeah, I wept. I'm about to cry right now. I wept when I heard that. It's still, I don't cry very much. I really don't, but it's still, I mean, for a guy like Rush, he had such an impact. He was a family man. You know it personally. I never met him in my life, but
It was like losing a member of the family, for sure.
And I remember when DeSantis, Rush, when they down here, Ron DeSantis ordered flags to be
at half mast,
flied at half staff, and these libs in Palm Beach said no. We're not going to do it. They disregarded DeSantis's order, and they were doing a lot of that. And I think but here I am. I'm going to hold it up because I couldn't find it on there. But there I am. The day I was there with a flag and a sign. Rest in peace, Rush, in front of the courthouse where they were, or the government building where they were refusing to fly the flags at half staff. I was there, and I was, wow, I was wearing my 47th hat, my Trump 47th hat there. This was back in 2021, and news came out, and I just wanted to be there standing for Rush, holding up the American flag because he loved this country, and that was just disgusting that the Palm Beach Commission refused to do that. But it just showed. I mean, you just look who your enemies were. Look who his enemies were, and he drove the libs crazy because he had their number. He had their number. He had them figured out. He called them out. And he had them figured out, and they hated it. They hated it so much. And all these things that are happening, talk about how they tried to cancel Rush in the 90s.
Oh, many times. Many times. They the worst was not in the 90s. It was just in the early 2000s when Senator Harry Reid, Rush called him Dingy Harry, sent a letter.
Dingy Harry.
sent a letter to the head of Clear Channel, requesting that Rush be taken off the air. So Rush got a copy of the letter, got the original copy of the letter, and put it for sale on eBay.
Yes, and he donated it to charity.
Donated all the money to charity, and Rush doubled whatever it made at the auction, doubling the amount that went to the charity.
Talk about Rush's dedication to the charities that he supported.
It knew no bounds. He would do a radiothon every year for leukemia, which then became even more important to him when one of his producers passed from leukemia. One of Rush's producers got sick in the early 2000s, and that was also a bit of a body blow.
Now, were you there in the studio at all with Bo Snerdley and Cookie? And I got a picture here, and this is a book that came out that everybody should pick up. I didn't even know this book was out.
Yep.
I just happened to be in a bookstore. Go figure. There's a Barnes and Noble here in Fort Lauderdale, and I saw it there, and I'm like, oh yeah, just
that one and James Golden's book, Rush on the Radio.
Yeah, here it is. That's backstage at the studio, and there he is in his studio there.
Yep.
What was it like being behind the scenes there?
It was always spine-tingling because you never knew when a truly historical moment was going to come down. I was in the New York studio, and Rush was in the Florida studio the day that he commented on Michael J. Fox, and that became a thing for a little while.
Oh, I remember that. He did kind of like a Trump thing. Do you think he regretted some of those? Do you think he went a little too far? I mean, I hate when people say go a little too far. I mean, you talk about like Howard Stern and stuff, but that he did a thing where he like talked about Michael J. Fox wasn't taking his medication.
Well,
'Cause Michael
in
J. Fox was
fairness,
there
Michael J.
promoting.
Fox was not taking his meds to make the point. He purposely didn't take his meds in order to make a point about Parkinson's. And Rush's opinion was that that was a bit too far, since since we all knew exactly how much he was going through to begin with. But I remember right after that happened, Kit Carson, who was his producer at the time, just looked at me and said, "It's going to be a day."
Do you think something he used to tweak the media, he would say.
Yeah.
Like he would do something because he knew Media Matters was recording his everything
Every
he
word.
said. Every word. And guys, if you think it's bad on social media now, I mean, Rush being on AM radio, this has been going on for a long time with people watching, clipping, and I would sell radio ads during Rush's show, and we would have people call. They go, "You got to take me off of Rush's show." Like, what you have me advertising on a racist show, and I'd be like, "Oh God," because I would sell advertising on it to people that didn't necessarily listen to Rush Limbaugh, but I would be like, "Dude, this is going to get you business," and it would. I mean, his show is the most popular, but then I'd have people go, "Oh, we can't be during Rush Limbaugh," because they would send this mob after a business for being on Rush Limbaugh, and I'd be like, no, they're lying. He's not a racist, and they would cherry pick things. They really were threatened by him a lot, and they really tried to cancel him. And even you talked about the Harry Reid. I mean, the freaking these senators and the letters in this book of all them sending a letter to Mark Mays at Clear Channel. Do you think the people in radio today would have the backbone to stand behind Rush Limbaugh? And do you think there will ever be anybody to fill his shoes at all, or to not never be able to fill his shoes? But
I don't. Well, in the current environment, I don't know how it's possible. Even where you have people that have isolated themselves from that kind of criticism, the problem is the outlets are not accepting of, the big talkers today all have their reputations in place. For someone to start from scratch and build that audience, how are you going to build? It would have to build someplace like on Twitter. It would have to build someplace like podcasts. But you would not get a large company to back somebody. In order to do it, you have to do what the Daily Wire has done, which is own all of their content. You have to do what Blaze Media has done, owning all of their content. The interesting thing about the Blaze is the Blaze does not content monitor any of their personalities. Anybody who's on the Blaze is their own person and is genuine to who they are.
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Again, going back to Steve Deace, he says of himself many, many times, "I don't care if the audience leaves me tomorrow. I own my show, and if you leave me, then you leave me. but I'm not going to alter my worldview to suit the audience.
And that is how I think Rush ran things. I
Yes.
mean, and boy, he was pulling in, I think,
Well,
there's
that's
some
why
point like 20 million viewers, right?
that's why he left doing a TV show. They wanted to moderate it too much.
I was wondering because it was basically the Daily Show before Jon Stewart.
Yes.
And I mean, it was funny, it was good, and then he just went to radio. So they wanted to put some moderation on him, and he said he ain't gonna do that. Oh, that's pretty cool. That's that's a guy you want to be like. I mean, it really is. So thanks for joining today, Scott Schaefer, long time. I mean, you considered Rush a friend, right? You worked for him. You did all his tech. If you talk about a problem you had that you fixed, that Rush had an emergency and needed you for something.
Oh, there are a number of them. Well, the one thing that still drives me crazy is that the tech industry has gone down the road of believing turn it on and turn it off and turn it back on again is an acceptable method of fixing something. If that's an acceptable method of fixing something, it didn't really work and it wasn't really ready for prime time, in my opinion. But we had a lot of things over time where those were, that was the suggested fix. Rush took hold of technology in ways that most people didn't, and he did it long before they did. Very few people print today. Very few people put what they've done and put it on paper unless it's for legal reasons. Rush always liked to work from printed material. He would always have, when he said a stack of stuff, that's exactly what it was. It was a stack of papers that were printed articles and commentary that he had ready to go that he would shuffle through during the show.
In his formerly nicotine-stained fingers.
Exactly. Apple had an update out, I believe it was High Sierra 10.13, that broke PostScript printing. Now, for those who don't know, most people have inkjet printers. You go buy them, they connect to your computer directly or connect wirelessly through AirPrint. That didn't really happen with most of the stuff that Rush had because most of what he had was network oriented. Well, to print over a network, you do it through one of a couple of different languages, the most popular and precise of which is PostScript. When 10.13 dropped and Rush adopted instantly upon a new operating system dropping, PostScript printing broke. And when he would go to print, almost everything he would go to print would come up with an error. The problem was that they were, the way Apple had reworked the printing process, they were taking too much HTML code and pushing that to the printer and not filtering it properly. So that became, and I had a workaround within about an hour, but that became an emergency to solve that took cooperation between Hewlett-Packard and Apple to get fixed in the long term.
Oh, wow. So you had to actually, you got in and you got the thing done. It wasn't just turning it off and on again. You actually solved the problem at the root.
Right. No, power cycling the printer would give him one or two prints, and then it would quickly devolve.
So you helped get all his stack of stuff that he would have every day, and he would go, you'd hear it, and
Yep.
And he had quit smoking long before, and but boy, I guess it can just, even if you smoked back a long time ago, he used to smoke a lot of cigarettes, right? But back when you,
yeah.
But he quit. It's just like people that quit drinking, and it can,
once the damage is done, once it's in your body,
But boy, he had an impact on so many lives here. And then his Rush Revere books really helped touching the next generation. He started the company 2If by Tea, where he created his own tea to put out. I don't know if that's being manufactured anymore, but
No, they when the Rush Revere books started getting popular, that's when the tea sort of faded away.
but he wanted to see what it was like to go start a business, bring it to market, and it was good. It was good tea. I wish I had hung on to some of that because those bottles. When you have a collector's item, you don't think about it at the time. You're just like, oh, this is good. I'll always have something like this, and then, but maybe you saved some. All right, thanks for joining, Scott Schaefer. I could go on with you for a very long time, and a lot of viewers have faded out, but I could talk about Rush and just talk to you for a long time because I just was such a huge fan of his. And what can people do to preserve Rush's legacy? Because I feel like when he died, when he
It was an important voice to lose.
You had the wisdom of Rush that was playing in that spot for months. So it seemed months after we lost him, it seemed like he was still alive because you could still tune in every day. And for months before those two guys took over, which I don't. It's just a different show. I mean, I don't know if you like Clay and Buck. It's a different show. It's not
It's
Rush.
totally different.
It's not even close. Not even the same format or anything. But it felt like he was alive for those few months still. And now I feel like you can't find him anywhere. You don't hear Rush's voice anywhere, and it's just his legacy is just he lives through us, but and Ron DeSantis, really. I think he passed the torch to Ron DeSantis. I think Reagan passed the torch to Rush, and I think Rush passed the torch to Ron DeSantis. And in his last broadcast, I think that's what he was doing. He was passing the torch there. And what can we do to bring back Rush's legacy? I know there's some legal things there with what you're able to do, but what can
I
be
would
done?
say the thing that everyone should do is, if you are so inclined, go out and find his original 2 books, The Way Things Ought to Be and See, I Told You So. As I've reread those books recently, there's so much in there that rings true and was a prediction for the future. I mean, he saw so much and put it down on paper so early on. Those are both from the mid 90s. But I recommend those 2 books very, very highly. As far as memories of Rush, the book that you showed is an excellent book. James Golden's book, Rush on the Radio, is also excellent.
You know, I would love to see just clips of Rush on Twitter, just being shared, clips of shows, and just a Twitter that's dedicated to sharing clips of shows. Is that possible?
That's something that the estate has to decide they want to take up.
It would be really cool to see something like that and carry on Rush's legacy, so we know what he said. And we know, because all the things that Rush said can be applied to today. You can go back to something he said in 2009 and apply it to today. You can go back to something he said in the 90s and apply it to today. During his whole 40-year span on radio, right? 40 years, right?
30 plus.
30 years. 30, yeah. He taught us the way, and he taught us these things, and it's all applicable today. Scott Schaefer, I would love. Do you have any quick story or about Rush or anything you'd like to tell to wrap this up?
God. You know that Rush was a big iPhone fan.
Oh yeah.
Big Apple fan. Loved to get the latest and greatest phones every year. It was my role or it became my role, to coordinate making sure that he had his initial first few phones on release day. So
Wow,
the
because he
Friday morning
always had the new iPhone.
always had the new unit the day of release. And I'd work that out with people within Apple or within AT&T or within Verizon. Any way that I could get someone to come up with a couple of units for him that day, because the moment he got them, he wanted to be right in.
Well, that is awesome, Scott. That's so cool. And how blessed you are to have known Rush and worked with him. Thanks for joining, Scott Schaefer. Please like and share this around. This is Chris Nelson. Thanks for watching.